the Senate leader and the minority leader asked two different questions, but both towards gearing repositioning of the EFCC. Before thinking of repositioning of any institution, we need to remind ourselves what that institution stands for. And there is no better way to talk about the EFCC than the Establishment Act itself. Mr. President, distinguished senators, the EFCC is backed by a law passed by this hallowed chamber or this National Assembly, and Section 7 and of course Section 6 of the EFCC Establishment Act clearly define the functions of the EFCC, as well as special powers and the laws that the EFCC is empowered to enforce. The provision of the Act itself, which is the Establishment Act 2004, the provisions of the Money Laundering Prohibition Act, the provisions of Advance Fee Fraud and Other Related Offences Act, the provisions of Failed Bank Recovery of Debt Act, the provisions of the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, Miscellaneous Offences Act, as well as sections of the Penal Code and Criminal Code that relate to economic and financial crimes. However, in 2015, this National Assembly passed the Cybercrime Act, which EFCC is among the institutions that is empowered to enforce. The Federal Revenue Act 2007 also came on board, in which we are also empowered to enforce certain provisions. Distinguished senators, that is the law or the act that the EFCC empowered to enforce. And throughout our history, the Commission have tried its modest best to see to it that those provisions of the law are being upheld. But of course, along the line, like any other institution or organization, there are pitfalls because we are not perfect, we are not human beings. What I will do to reposition the EFCC, or what I envisage the EFCC to do, is to ensure that we work on our own standard operational procedure, to improve on the standard operational procedures, so much so that all that is expected of us is being written down somewhere in a document, to try as much as possible to curtail the usage of discretion from the office of the Executive Chairman down to the ordinary investigator in the EFCC. We are looking forward to an EFCC whereby I, as Executive Chairman, if I give an instruction to a junior officer, he will look at my face and say, "Sir, I have understood your instruction, but I will not be able to do it because of so section of the rules and regulations governing the EFCC." We hope that if confirmed by this Senate, we are going to be more transparent, we are going to be more accountable. We have, of course, the lingering problem or issues bordering on management of assets, etc., etc. We hope, if given the opportunity, my colleagues and I will embark on the digitalization of the processes in the EFCC. In essence, what I'm saying is that we are going to embrace technology to enable us keep our records properly, so that as at when due, if Nigerians are asking questions, it's just a matter of pressing a button. Distinguished senators, I also want to emphasize here regarding the issue of repositioning. I've talked about processes and procedures and the law, but the backbone of every organization is in its human resource. I hope and pray that we will still come back to this chamber, of course, for proper appropriation, etc., to enable us build the capacity of our staff at the EFCC to meet up with the current challenges of new typologies of crime, as well as trends in money laundering etc., etc. So that at the end of the day, our vision of getting this country rid of economic and financial crimes is actualized. EFCC, as of today, we have, of course, an academy. We need to work on it. We need to reorganize it so that it meets up with the challenge of the current world. I have talked about the issue of synergy between the EFCC and sister security and law enforcement agencies in the country, as well as the work I envisage to do together with our own foreign strategic partners. We are going to work on that. We are going to strengthen it. EFCC is not a lone ranger. We are going to reach out. The job of fighting economic and financial crimes is for everybody to be on board. And we will ensure that because we don't have monopoly of knowledge, everybody is on board to ensure that at least we rid this country of economic and financial crimes. Going forward, and in relation to this, Mr. President, distinguished Senator, the EFCC under my watch, and if confirmed by this hallowed chamber, will work on proactive approach rather than reactive approach in the process of good governance in this country, rather than fighting wars of corruption. We understood at the Commission that there is difference between fighting corrupt people and fighting corruption. Fighting corruption is about good governance. It's about working on these institutions of government to tell them, areas where they need to work to avoid leakages, etc., etc. We're going to work on that, and hopefully the EFCC is going to be a better place in that regard. Distinguished Senator Muhammad Adamu Aleru from my constituency, thank you very much, sir, for kind words, asks about the issue of sales of trucks in Port Harcourt. Thank you very much, distinguished Senator, for asking that question. Anybody that is familiar with the processes and workings of the EFCC knows that even the executive chairman of the EFCC doesn't have the powers to dispose a single asset. That responsibility lies with the office of the Secretary of the Commission. I'm saying this, I'm starting from that end to confirm to Nigerians and indeed this chamber that I, as zonal head of the EFCC, never for once sold a single asset in Port Harcourt. I never did. The then Secretary of the Commission, together with 3 directors and other staff from the headquarters, flew into Port Harcourt and disposed of the trucks and other assets in them that were forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria. Sequel to our own singular effort as part of the reformation that I brought to the Port Harcourt Zonal Office. Let me put it on record, Mr. President, distinguished senators, that when I took over the Port Harcourt Zonal Office in January 2019, the year before, the Zonal Office recorded only 33 convictions. But because of the way we transformed the Zonal Office, we recorded an unprecedented 216 convictions within a year. 216 convictions. We never sold anything in Port Harcourt Zonal Office. It was the head office that did everything. We don't know how the payments were made. We don't know who buy. We don't know who lost out in the auction, etc., etc. That is for the record. And besides, distinguished senators, assuming we even did that, the EFCC could have been the first to punish me. They could have investigated me. They could have even prosecuted me. But the then Director of Operations, who was our Director of Operations, who happens to be the acting chairman of the commission as at now, was the one that even posted me to Lagos to head. Assuming I have something or skeletal or something bad that I did, he couldn't have been thinking of giving me higher responsibility to manage the biggest operational base in the EFCC. Thank you very much, distinguished senators.
Thank you.